Joining me today is the creative team of the upcoming mystery thriller Out of Alcatraz from Oni Press. One is the co-creator of the critically acclaimed AMC series Halt and Catch Fire. He's also the writer of series like She Could Fly, Briar, The United States of Captain America, The Mask, The Pledge of Allegiance to the Mask, Plastic Man No More, and the Eisner-nominated Doctor Doom series. The other is also Eisner-nominated, and he's also the creator behind Harrow County, or he's one of the creators behind Harrow County, B.P.R.D, The Stone King, and The Lonesome Hunters. It is my pleasure to welcome both Christopher Cantwell and Tyler Crook onto the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Hey,
thank you.
Hello.
You guys sound lively, and that's good. It's been, I'm so happy you're here. First, I should say that before I get into the madness that we're currently living. But, before we get out of Alcatraz, I found out recently, Chris, that you're no longer on social media. Congratulations on that.
I am. Yeah, Tyler, I'm sorry. I know we're about to promote a book. It's just like,
let me help
I
with
literally
that.
was just like, good chunk. I just did it, man. It was, yeah.
Do it. I'm so glad that you did that. You are, you're doing I honestly wish I could do that. I envy you in that sense.
My therapist says that it was probably equally like a self-destructive, isolating move, and then also probably a very healthy move.
Yeah.
So it's like a dialectic. You know what I mean? Like both are true.
We're all kind of prone to some of those actions, but
Yes.
we are roughly 37 days into 2025, and it feels like it's been about 18 months. So,
Yes.
Chris, you've kind of gotten into it a little bit. Tyler, if you want to elaborate too, how you guys doing mentally? How's things?
Tyler, you want to go first? Do you want me to?
Oof, man, it's rough. Like, I love my country, and and I don't feel like the country that I was born in is going to make it. It's it's a really stressful time, and I don't quite know what to do. I'm doing my bit to call my reps, and I'm involved in my local politics stuff, and that seems to be about all I can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chris, how about you?
I live in Los Angeles, so and I actually just moved back to Los Angeles on December 30th of last year. We'd lived in a town called Claremont, which is a college town about 30-40 miles east towards the mountains. We lived at a boarding school there, and we finally made the move back to LA, and we moved to a little neighborhood called Highland Park, and where literally my street is the border of Pasadena. And so a week into our arrival, you could see the Eaton fire from our front porch.
Wow.
And so it was horrendous, and I can't even, that even seems like it's an understatement of a word for this experience out here. But, there's just the list of people I know and love and care about, worked with, over the last 25 years in LA, the LA County area, who have lost everything or been displaced, or are suffering in some other ways. It's terrible. And that actually is one of the reasons why I hit the ejector seat on the socials. I had pulled back a lot, and I was only on Blue Sky, the supposed, better version of what came before. But that week leading up to the fires, there was all this stuff with Instagram. And Tyler, you kind of clued me in on this too. I actually attribute some of the Instagram stuff to you, because you were really concerned about the AI training. And I think we had even communicated about, because my account has always been private on Instagram. It's only for friends and family, and I share pictures of my kids. But I pretty much, it was like, they're still, even though it's private, they're using pictures of my kids to train their AI algorithms, and then our buddy Marky Z coming out and saying some really ugly shit, or feeling empowered to do so. And so I was like, okay, that part and parcel with trying to support people who lost everything on Blue Sky, and it getting enough attention that it was getting, I don't know, I can't wrap my head around it, guys. Like, it's just attention that was so negative and mean and cruel from all sides of everything, that I was like, okay, I'm talking about friends who have lost their homes, and here are strangers being ad hominem towards them and me. And I was like, I don't need it. And so I'll just hide behind my work and disappear and keep my life small, you know? So, and then, and then you look to the national level and just every 5 minutes. It's funny, I'm not on social media, so I can't doom scroll, but I can still read the news, and that alone feels like doom scrolling. I mean, I had an anxiety dream about the valves opening in Northern California, you know, and the flooding farms, and how in the summer it's going to be dry. Anyway, it's a scary time. The mantra for me is I'm trying to keep my world and my life small and focus on my kids and my wife and my work, and do what I can where it makes sense. But boy, what a yeesh.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we're at a point where like, at least I feel like there's a lot of people who are sort of becoming very, like, painfully cognizant of how our online lives are not providing what we need from them.
Yes, it just feels like a kind of illusory. And it's funny, I worked in this before I was a screenwriter, and I worked in early social media marketing stuff, and this was the earliest days of Facebook, but I was off of that. I mean, more than 10 years ago, because I could see the writing on the wall, and you just kind of retreat because it's, I don't know, it doesn't give you. You're right. I had jury duty in Pasadena last week, and I ended up on a trial, and it was not a fun experience, but I was actually really heartened by the people that were there. It was a kind of beautiful cross section of people from Pasadena and the LA area, old, young, all races, creeds, colors, and the attorneys were really impressive and human. The judge was very impressive and human. It was a criminal case, and as a man's, you know, you're dealing with a person's future, but it was hard, and you saw the flaws in the system and how tragic they can be. And then also it was a thing that I wasn't expecting to restore my faith in humanity. But I really feel like those jurors and the people in that courtroom were really decent, upstanding, thoughtful, insightful people all in their own way. You know, and they were delivery drivers and forensic psychologists and radiologists and working at grocery stores, and this is their home, and it was on fire, and it was actually kind of a complex experience. I'll put it that way. But a one that was, again, another dialectic of like, this is awful, and then also like, these people we're in this together. I don't know.
Isn't that interesting, right? Like that's kind of that's sort of what we're missing. I think, Tyler, you were sort of alluding to this too, is that like when we're around a person, we see the similarities. We look for that connection. We understand that we're all more similar than different. But it seems like as soon as we're either behind a screen or in a group of people, that's when folks start to lose their minds. And I don't know if it was George Carlin that said this. Maybe I'm misquoting here, but he's like, I like a person, but I hate people, you know? And I think we're starting to get there closer now. It seems we're getting closer to that point. And to speak on what you're saying there, Chris, it's like, I got rid of Facebook. I got rid of Twitter pretty quickly. Both of those were easy exits, no problems. Threads, same. Instagram, it's a little tougher, right? Like,
because it's like a photo album of your life, right? And but then I started to realize that, like, I'm pretty sure like whatever Tyler was seeing, or like my friends and family were seeing, because Tyler and I were connected, it's like the algorithm isn't serving you my kid's trip to Death Valley. It's serving you some rando. And I wasn't seeing my wife's post. He wasn't seeing my own post, and we're posting the kids. And it's like, well, shit, I'm just going to take these pictures of the kids. I'm going to send them to you and then your parents. And Tyler, I will give you I'm going to mail you a thumb drive of the last 2 months of pictures of my children. It's just 400 pictures of my children. So you can have them.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've got it through. Well, Tyler, I don't know. I'm sorry. Did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I guess I was just wanted to add a little bit. Like I said, I've been trying to get more and more involved in my local politics, and I live in a rural Oregon, and there's not like, it's very easy to actually be involved in that, and I'm always sort of shocked and heartened by how every time I go to a city hall meeting or a county meeting or anything, it's like it feels like amateur hour. And you really get the feeling that it's like, these are your neighbors trying to do the best that they can. And there are clearly a few bad actors around who are so like internet brained with their conspiracy theories that they cause a lot of problems. But there's also just tons of normal people who are trying to help their neighbors get through the day. And it's good to be, be able to be there and cheerlead the folks that are doing good.
The envy it's crazy over here, guys, because I'm in Indiana and we are about as red as it gets, and I hate it. Like I literally moved from Missouri to Indiana, and talk about, if you go back to 2016 and then this last year, talk about the two states that were the first ones to confirm red. It pains me, and I cannot wait to eventually leave this place. But as you guys were saying, this is where family is. This is home. I'm from here. Like, it's tough.
Yeah, there's lots of people you love there, and there are lots of great people there in both those places. Yeah, I mean, I have family in Missouri, and I have, I have a lot of family in Illinois, which is blue, right? But it's there. It was like Southern Illinois, right on the corner. It doesn't matter, right? Like I had neighbors in Claremont. It's a college town, so you'd have really ardent academic blue near the colleges, and then as soon as you go out, it's firefighters who voted the other way, but they're also then up on Mount Baldy fighting those fires, and then, it's such a weird time, guys.
Yeah. No, it's very, very difficult to sort of navigate our current time.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try to sort of dig ourselves out of here, because as
Let's
much
do
as
it.
I honestly, for the next 50 minutes, I would absolutely love to just sort of pick your guys' brains on what 2025 is, and sort of, how to navigate it. And like, maybe we could brainstorm on this whole thing.
That feels like a dark wilderness trek.
Yeah.
Well, but I think our time honestly could be well spent here on the show, talking about your guys' new series, which is Out of Alcatraz through Oni Press. And, listeners should be expecting that at their local comic book shop on March 19th. I'm going to give a brief synopsis just for the layman. 1962 in June, Frank Morris and Clarence Anglin, is that correct? Anglin, thank you. Mm-hmm. Clarence Anglin have escaped Alcatraz and survived the treacherous waters of the San Francisco Bay. Now on the run, they're guided by a mysterious handler with secrets of her own, with a relentless federal manhunt closing in, and the danger at every turn. They'll soon learn that life on the run might not be even worse than Alcatraz itself. So, Chris, I'd love to start with you here. I've heard you talk about sort of your fascination with 1962, this Alcatraz event, 1962, and the mystery surrounding that escape, and how the government sort of attempted to cover up these events, and it actually backfired, and people started to get more curious. So, for you, when did this fascination begin?
What?
And
oh God, sorry.
And are there specific moments from history that you knew you wanted to include in this interpretation of the story?
Well, so I would say that in terms of the government case, like there's a little bit more nuance to it, and I'll reel it all the way back to, so you read She Could Fly, my first comic, which is
Martin
about
Morazzo.
a character. Yes, I love that man. Yep. But it's about the main character has a pretty profound OCD, a type of OCD that I actually have as well, and the OCD, and particularly that type of OCD, an OCD kind of geared brain craves certainty, and so my brain, from a young age, I would find myself ruminating on things in history where there was no certainty in terms of what happened. And that led me down. I'm from Dallas. I grew up in Dallas. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in Dallas. So JFK assassination was a big thing, and it just kind of a rabbit hole. And I've actually done a comic series about that as well. But in that case, what's similar between that and Alcatraz, where there's also no answers, right? Which is they were never found. The government story is they drowned. All three of them, right? It's the Anglin brothers and Frank. There was a fourth, Alan West, who didn't get off. He couldn't get out of his cell. He glued his thing too tight, his grate too tight, so he couldn't get out of there. But that report that they drowned is based on hearsay from, I believe, a Chinese freighter coming into the bay who said they saw a body on their way in, and they found John Anglin's wallet. But the wallet the wallet was not recovered. They never verified the story with the freighter. They never recovered that body. So they were like, oh, they drowned. But it's literally, I just talked about jury duty. That's hearsay. It's not even evidence, right? It's like, well, and so, that's, you're in 62, you're still with like Hoover's FBI, right? There's a shadow looming large over that. And that place, Alcatraz, was built to be escape-proof. That was the federal story. It's a federal prison, right? It's not a state prison, so it's a federal prison, and it's meant to be state-of-the-art and escape-proof. Most of the people who ended up at Alcatraz, other than a couple of the big-ticket folks like Capone and places like that, is they were transferred there. They weren't sentenced to Alcatraz. They were transferred to Alcatraz because they'd already escaped from other facilities, right? And Frank Morris had already escaped from prison. The Anglin brothers had already escaped from prison. And so the idea was Alcatraz was a place you could not escape from because geographically that's thick. And then lo and behold, 3 guys get off and they can't find them. And so the government is hard pressed to go, we don't know. And then California freaks out and there are fugitives on the loose and all of this. They had to say, no, this is our facility. And it's impervious, right? You can't get off of it. And, that story actually, it didn't work. It didn't quite work because I think it closed the following year, right? So I don't think it was directly due to the escape or attempted escape or whatever actually happened, but they just couldn't keep that place running. It was too expensive, and that narrative was just hard to sell at a certain point when you have 3 missing guys that you never know what happened to them, even though they say they drowned.
Yeah, it's interesting. Is I didn't know a lot about sort of this moment in history. I'm obviously somewhat familiar just based on culture and whatnot. But what was really refreshing about reading this first issue of Out of Alcatraz is that I didn't know the names. I wasn't familiar with sort of the happenings or even the legends of what might have happened to these 3 guys. And I just found that so refreshing. And I think without spoiling anything, this first issue, it feels so grounded and based in reality. And Tyler, I'd love to kind of go to you here. What I think you do so well, and part of the reason why I'm such a huge fan of your work, is that your style sort of lends itself to otherworldly mythology, magic, horror, but it's all grounded in reality. Think of Lonesome Hunters, think of Harrow County. All these are like, I feel like it expresses that so well. So, what was it about this story that enticed you to jump on board, and how familiar were you to these mysteries beforehand?
Well, I think the 2 things that really attracted me to this initially when Chris and Bess brought me the story pitch was that I loved that it was such a great setting. Just the time and place was just so exciting. Like I really like period pieces. My very first comic was Petrograd, which was set in Russia during the Revolution or just before the Revolution. And Harrow County was set in the 30s, and Witchfinder was set in Victorian England. It's like all these like really strong settings. And I felt like Alcatraz had that too, where it was just the really, really, evocative time and place. And the other thing was just like the structure of the story about everyone trying to get free really, resonated with me.
Yeah. Now, Chris, I think I heard somewhere in another conversation that this was originally a series pitch, right? Is that correct?
This is the only time I've ever done this, but yeah, I actually in 2019, I wrote this as a pilot for a limited series, an original limited series, and I took it out to a couple places, but I really just wrote it for me because I was coming off of something that would have been the follow-up to Halt and Catch Fire, and it almost got off the ground and then didn't, and so there was a little bit of dismay and can I still do this? And do I still like this? Doing this, meaning just screenwriting. And I wrote this pilot based on something I very much was obsessed with for a long time. And so, it kind of sat there on my hard drive for years. And then when I met with Oni at Comic-Con in 2022, I just started talking about it with Bess and Sierra and Hunter, and they were really interested. And it's a lot to ask someone, especially in comics, to read a 60-page pilot. But it was like, I don't know. And they did. And they Bess was really insightful, and they kind of pulled it apart and really saw what I was trying to do there. And then Bess immediately thought of Tyler, and then we asked Tyler to read a 60-page screenplay, and he did, and he liked it. But yeah, it's the only time I've kind of adapted myself in that direction, because I usually like to try to do comics for their own sake. I went down the road a little bit with an adaptation of She Could Fly, but it was very different than this process. So yeah, it was a weird one. But in looking at what I think, especially with what Tyler's done, I don't know. I feel like if we just photograph this, and again, that sounds like I'm degrading amazing directors of photography out there, but just to Tyler set a high visual bar for the story.
As he does with most stories.
Yes,
we're going to brag on Tyler real quick while he's looking at us.
Yes, I think that I've even shared this with a couple of producers, because that's what the comic book companies like to do, and again, like we would both be excited, but the people I've responded to that work with some pretty great people have gone, wow, we would have to figure out how to, this art is phenomenal, and we would have to figure out how to meet that standard. That's been said to me a couple times. So I'm glad it's a book.
Isn't that interesting though? I feel like that's sort of an extremely difficult, if not completely impossible venture to faithfully adapt a comic and expect to get the tone, maybe like more than 80% there. Like, I don't know why my brain went here, but I know they're doing the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow story that's based off Tom King and Belkis Evely. How in the hell do you plan on trying to like come anywhere close to Belkis and her work in that book? Yeah. Like, that's
Belkis'
just one example.
Work in that book is amazing, and the story can be pliable, and if anything, it's like you've got the only thing I feel like that's respectful to do to both versions of a project when you do something like that is to just really stake a unique claim in that medium, the way you have in the previous, right? Yeah. And so I feel like I hope they do that, right? And I, some pretty great people there. So but yeah, you look at what Belkis did. How do you, how do you even approach that? And we're a little bit in the same vein. I just think
agreed.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny though, because like I feel like my approach to Alcatraz in particular is probably the thing that is most influenced by like movies and TV than anything else I've ever worked on. Like I really am like sort of trying to frame moments and characters in ways that are evocative of like the coolest movies of the 60s and 70s and stuff.
That's true.
Sure. Yeah.
That's true.
I'm getting really strong No Country for Old Men vibes. Am I accurate in that, or does that feel
great?
Good?
I was thinking a little bit today that like one of the things I keep thinking about is actually Wild at Heart, which I don't think really comes across in the book, but like just how some of those settings, especially some of the desert settings, like where Isabella Rossellini's her little like shack out in the desert is just like that has such a great vibe.
Yeah.
You mentioned Tyler. You mentioned HUD as a kind of character inspiration for one of the characters, and I was thinking about that. Made me think about like Giant, the James Dean movie, and how like it's like I feel like anything we do, you'd have to get those like David Lean lenses on it and really open it up. You know what I mean? And then and then kind of use the same technique to get into these people's faces. I don't know. That could be cool, but I don't know.
What I think this is probably a good transition also to talk kind of a little bit more broadly about Oni Press. Like, what is in the water over at Oni currently? They're putting out these news, posts about a series with Patrick Horvath. There's obviously they've been doing a lot of the EC stuff. This is a good example. Like they've been really hitting on the head in terms of like new, interesting, fresh ideas over there, which is interesting because for a long time, and I mean this respectfully, if anybody's listening, Bess, anybody that's listening to the show from Oni, I love the publisher, but it's always sort of just been like the home to Scott Pilgrim and then like some fun books here and there, right? But like it feels like they're really making a point to have an identity going into 2025, and I find that really refreshing. And I'm also on another, like, sort of selfishly, because I'm here with you guys right now, Out of Alcatraz, what a way to sort of open up the year too with it, right?
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's in the creator space, the creator owned space, there's no better place to be right now than Oni. Like it just the bench of talent on the editorial side, and even the marketing side, and the way that they're carefully shepherding this book out into the world and their plans and strategies. I mean, from Hunter on down, and Sierra and Bess. I mean, it's just, and they just brought over. Ooh, maybe I can't say it yet. I don't know if it's been announced. They brought over. I'll say it. I almost got in trouble. They brought over another editor that's I've worked with. That's personally one of my favorite editors. That just has a really great head for story. Bess is incredible as an editor. Just sees the whole picture. It's a crack team.
Yeah, and I really feel like they're doing a great job considering just like the complete meltdown of social media. Like it really feels like they're sort of like navigating it in a way where they really understand that social media is like not what it was, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
which a lot of publishers I don't think are quite there yet.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, they're not quite privy to how to approach that. They're still posting on Facebook, right? It's like, what are you doing? Like my mom is looking at memes on there right now. There's no need to promote your new book, right?
Your mom's looking at Shrimp Jesus and
an AI generated good morning posts. But I will say that to kind of get back a little bit to Out of Alcatraz, the tagline for the book, which I found really interesting, and it sort of it kind of resonated with me for a quick moment, was "Freedom is just another kind of prison." That's sort of like the speaking of Oni and sort of the marketing of the book. Again, that really stuck with me. And the idea of freedom versus captivity in this first issue, and like, does anyone really escape? Without spoiling anything, it remains sort of a major theme throughout this 48 page giant issue. So here's a super loaded, very easy question to ask you guys here. Do you plan on tackling that question of what does freedom mean? Or in the context of the story, are you just kind of more interested in asking the question? And Tyler, I'll start with you here.
You should really start with Chris.
Chris, I will start with you here.
Oh boy.
It's a big question.
No, we do. I mean, I think freedom, the theme of freedom is really important throughout the book. And you brought up the time period and events. We don't touch anything else as a historical watershed other than the escape. But what's interesting about 62 is in a year the president will be assassinated. Civil rights is already starting to kind of rear its head, right, and become at the fore of American consciousness. Vietnam is about to kick off, and then you're headed into. I mean, at the same time, culturally, you're looking at. We have the 1962 California is very different from 1969 California, especially in the San Francisco area, right? Like, and we have two closeted characters in this book that are living in the 1962 California, right? Which is still a San Francisco built by the 1849ers and the gold rush and saloons and shipping and a kind of Western vibe to it, right? And then you had the kind of the farmlands throughout the central part of California that were from Steinbeck on, are still there. And
we haven't gone full Chinatown yet.
No, the Owens River Valley still has this water. Or
Right.
no, it lost this water like years ago. No, that's not right actually. Yeah, because Chinatown is like 29,
10,
right?
20 years.
Yeah. Owens River Valley's already been. Mulholland's already destroyed the southern part of the state. But that idea of like, and also California is this place where like you just keep going until you stop and there's nowhere else to go. I think it really is this. It's a hinge point in the American idea, right? To tie it back to the beginning of our conversation, and this idea of freedom in America is a very potent one. It's at the fore of a lot of things in trite ways, and then also in profound ways, and in complex and subversive ways, right? Because of the country's history when it comes to slavery and the things that it was built on, and these other ideas that. And the displacement of indigenous people, all of these things that I said dialectic at the beginning. I'm just going to keep coming back to that world. Like these kind of opposing truths that live side by side, right? Like, and our prison system is another kind of example of this, where it's like, and it's rehabilitative quality. So it's like, so we have this kind of America on the cusp in 62, and it's about to do a massive introspection that's violent and radical and tumultuous that lasts until Reagan, right? And then it goes, reel it back in, everybody. Never mind, right? Like
we're seeing phase 2 of that plan right now, actually.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Where you go. Where Reagan says, "Make America Great Again." He says, "City on a Hill," which is a puritanical idea. Like, but we're in the post-war, we won setting, but that's kind of starting to fall apart. And so you have these characters that are all representative of American people who are trying to be free, whether they're prisoners or they're African American or they're homosexual. Or they're just trying to get by. They're trying to survive, right? And so you see people who are divided in a place that's divided, even though it is also a place where people, all they have is each other, right? And California is this paradise. I do believe that it has some of these qualities and promise and wonder, and yet it's built on the backs of a lot of hard things. I mentioned Mulholland, and that's just one thing. There's a lot, and so it's all at play in there, and then you get into more universal ideas, right? It's not listen, the book is not a polemic against anything. I really don't think that. I think someone in a different country could pick this up and it would resonate with them, because it also deals with, like, can you ever be free of yourself and your own baggage, right? There's a famous saying that wherever you go, you take yourself with you. You know what I mean? Like, so Frank Morris can't escape himself. You know what I mean? Like, the Anglins can't do that either. Like, none of the characters can, just like we can't. So there's an acceptance that has to come with some of this stuff, and this idea of what liberation can mean in different ways. But anyway, that's my long-winded answer.
I think, like, one of the things that, and it manifests in the characters in different ways, but one of the things about it that I think this story explores is that, like, freedom is responsibility. In a lot of ways, it's like, once you're free, you have a responsibility to either protect that freedom or take responsibility for your own actions in ways that a lot of the characters are sort of struggling with. And I don't feel like the story, like, really, like, it's not one of those stories where it's like it's going to get to the end and, like, some character will say to the other character, freedom is what's in your heart, or anything like that. You know what I mean? But, like, hopefully the reader will come away with some understanding of what they want to think about freedom.
Tyler, in the lettering pass on the 5th issue, though, I was going to change one of the lines to that, though, just to hilarious.
We all have freedom, and freedom is half the battle. No, I think a really great representation of what you guys are sort of speaking on here, and sort of the sort of blurred line of freedom is, Tyler, you have an incredible page in this book, in this first issue, where you've got Alan being interrogated. Where are these two guys at? And you have our two titular main characters in a clementine field enjoying a couple pieces of fruit. Like, come on, that, like, I know, again, as we just spoke about it, sort of the line between freedom and captivity. Where is it? What does it mean to be free? All that. I think in that moment, and Chris, you sort of talked about this a little bit at the beginning of our conversation about, like, you got to have small moments, right? Like, we need to stop thinking so broadly. We need to start thinking about, like, small achievements, small moments. This was that small moment where they got to sort of embellish in that a little bit.
You're right. I think that's a good way, because with all the grandiosity I just, spewed at you, I think that, like, it's a story about, like, just, it's a small story about different groups, at least pockets of people trying to get by. And we tried to build in a lot of those little small moments, and it reminds me a little bit of you. It's funny to bring this up, because, Tyler, I just remembered that you hate this guy, but and I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but Jack Kerouac. But here's my read on Kerouac, which is that, like, they're either, when they're in the middle of a moment that is this kind of electric moment, they're thinking about something they should have done 40 miles back, right? Or the woman they should be with, or this, or why did my dad leave? Or they're thinking about, man, it's going to be great when we get to Denver. And then they get to Denver and it's like, this sucks, right? Like, there's no living, and they're constantly grappling with that, which is like, it feels it makes so much sense that Jack Kerouac went into Zen, which is about being present in the now, because he was really struggling with that his entire life. And like, I think our characters are too, but there are these little moments like you talked about the orange, or there's the moment where Frank gets to take a private shower. And it's just one panel that Tyler did, or like, I don't know, like Clarence goes into a little drugstore and looks at all the toys and candy, like it's little things like that you go like, oh, like it washes over you as it washes over them. And then boom, it's back to, we got to move. We got to do this. What about this? Or we're going to get screwed over here. And this guy doesn't care. And who am I? And all that existential stuff. So it cuts through in those moments. And I think we try to do that a couple times with the characters through the book.
Mm-hmm. I think you do. And again, I said this to my co-host Aaron, who's not with us tonight. I mentioned it sort of offhandedly without really thinking about it. And I said, this Out of Alcatraz book, this first book, it's my favorite book of 2025. And he goes, it's January. What are you talking about? And I was like, yes, you're right. Sure. Good point. But there's something important about this book that I think folks are really going to grab onto. And I do want to talk about it more. And I'd love to get you guys back on when the trade is eventually out, a couple months down the road. But selfishly, I don't want to spoil anything for everybody. Hopefully that sort of teases everything up for you guys for Out of Alcatraz. But selfishly, I have a couple questions for each of you individually here. And, I want to start here with Tyler. Now, since our first conversation here on the podcast last year, I have been waving biggest Tyler Crook fan flag proudly on top of the mountaintop. I'm sure you get annoyed with my tags on social media constantly, but I just feel like people should know. I know Chris probably agrees with me. And I feel like you have to answer me this while you're here, right? And that is, when are we going to get more Lonesome Hunters?
Man, I wish I could tell you for sure. It doesn't look like Dark Horse is going to do more Lonesome Hunters at this point.
What? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to call? Call your local representative. Call your local Dark Horse representative.
Yeah, make sure you email Dark Horse at darkhorse.com or something. I don't know. Tell people, make sure that if you mention it on social media, they do notice it. I'm playing with a bunch of different ideas of how to get it going. It's not a story that I'm willing to sort of just let die because I do have a couple more story arcs. And it's a story that's like really important to me personally. So I'm hoping to really get it. I'm hoping to start getting, at least have a plan together in the next couple months for how I'm going to get it out, and then get it on my schedule in a way that won't kill me.
I know you were saying it took you like a couple months per issue, right? Like it's about, the timeline?
When things are normal, I can do an issue in about 2 months. And it seems like it's been much longer lately.
But I feel like that's the beauty of this process. And that's, again, to just kind of like champion Oni here, like Bess knew and Sierra knew and Hunter knew, like build in the timelines for these books. And over on the license side of things, like, by the way, I will say IDW aside and Heather Antos aside, because that feels like what I thought comic books were when I was a kid in the 90s is working for them. But other places, the timelines are, even for me, and I've got it easy because it's like, here's a Word document, like,
right.
It's a little ludicrous. It's like, and I worry about the artists, and it's been nice. I like to think of Tyler carefully painting in his studio and going, feel like he's got the time. Yeah. And watching your comic book cool down and going, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, feels like what it's supposed to be, I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely have not. Well, I've definitely felt pressured to keep it moving. Like I'm one of those people where it's like, if I'm not making progress on a project, my stress level just gets through the roof. And like the easiest way to keep myself happy is to have like a goal for what I'm going to get done in a day, and then get it done in a day. And then I'm just like the happiest dude like on the planet. So I've been making steady progress on this, and there've been some other little projects that have come up and stuff. But like I did some EC comic stuff, and
has that been announced? I haven't heard anything about that.
Oh yeah, I did. Well, they're both out, in fact.
Oh, they
I
are?
did,
Okay.
I did one where I wrote and drew it about a zombie story. I think it's in the EC Epitaphs from the Abyss #3, and then I did a story with Matthew Rosenberg that I think is in #5.
Okay. I'm going to put that on my mental note right now because I didn't know that was a thing. And then, again, I want to sort of switch gears over to you, Chris, here. Whenever I talk about your work to someone, I have to mention the Doctor Doom series that you did back in 2019 and 2020 with Salvador Larroca. And, not only is it super smart, and not only would Victor rather destroy an entire universe than make nice with Reed in this story, but every part of this story I feel like it just gets Doom and understands why he's so compelling. It also has, ironically enough, one of my favorite interactions between those two, where I think it's in issue 9, where they basically are trying to sideways, halfway compliment each other, but not really. Like it's one of my favorite 2-page interactions. So, we're about to get a couple years of some pretty intense Doom things, whether it be comics with Ryan North and his One World Under Doom event here in the summer of 2025, or of course, as many people already know, RDJ coming back to the MCU as the character. So another big question for you here, Chris. When you started initially planning out this run here, since the ending of it with hindsight, what are some things that you believe people should understand about Victor in order to fully grasp that character?
Oh boy. I mean, I really love the character, and I grew to love the character, and it was the first work I did for Marvel, is the short story that's in there, A Rose for Victor, which was part of the War of the Realms stuff. But I went with it. My favorite, I don't have it here, I have it in my office. My favorite Doom story is Triumph and Torment, where he and Doctor Strange confront Mephisto, and it's like, who's the better sorcerer? Then it really leans into the soul of his mother and all of this stuff, and the love he has for his people. That to me was such a huge, important part of the character, which is that he loved his people, and that there's a code there, which is why I think you sometimes see him working with other heroes or doing these things, and obviously, but also capable of incredible, unspeakable villainy, right? If you press the wrong button on the guy. And that issue you mentioned, issue 9, is, I think that's my favorite issue in the run, because the whole thing is Reed. He's going to save the world. Like, Doom is going to say, no one else can do it. And he's like, I'm going to save the world. And it's working. And he's going to go save the world and close the black hole near the moon. And Reed just calls him to say good luck.
Yeah.
And it fucks up his entire life. And it's like, and you can never, if you go back and look at it, and I think Salva did it so well, because Reed is not, he's a little like Reed is a hero and a great character himself, but he's a little pissy with Captain America, where he's like, he's really enjoying this. And it's the only time you see Reed. And then he just calls him, and Salva drew his face just flat, like expressionless, where he's like, I just want to say good luck. And Victor's like, why did he do that? Like, and he's like, he knows something's wrong, and he just undoes himself, right? Yeah. And like, it's that the character is his own worst enemy, right? Like, that's
the only one that can beat
thing.
Doom is Doom.
Yes, exactly. Like, that's the whole thing. And like, even when he gets to the finale, and like the other version of him is like, you could have fixed your face like years ago. And he's like, but you're wearing that mask. And he just gets so angry, I think that interaction, and then in issue 6, the little dance that he has, there's like a little road movie. I think that issue is called The Road to Latveria, which is like a homage to the Bing Crosby, Bob Hope movies. But it's him and Kang, and they're working their way across the Southwest, and they are kind of friends. And like, at one point they're on a boat, and like, they're yelling at each other so much they just start laughing. And I can't remember. It's like I think Kang says, I will destroy you, Victor. And he says, I'll destroy you first. But they're really saying, I love you, man. Like, and it's, it's like that kind of thing where it's like only two egomaniacs can really see each other, because otherwise they're like quite cripplingly lonely, and like that's also true with Doom. So I don't know. Yeah, he's a great character.
I love that.
All right. I don't want to, I just wanted to get those 2 quick questions in for you two both, because again, I just love both those works. And, I have one final question for you guys before I let you go here. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. We always like to end these conversations by asking our creators, what's something you've been enjoying recently? And this could be, a comic, a movie, a video game. I know, Tyler, you've worked in video games, podcasting. If you want to say the Oblivion Bar, that'd be cool. Or, just whatever you've been loving. And, Tyler, let's go ahead and start with you. What's something you've been really enjoying here recently?
I have been, my wife and I have been working our way through like all the Star Trek shows, and that has just been like such like a comfort for me.
Everyone tells me Next Generation is the one I should watch. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, I love it.
I think you should watch all of them. I think
Yes.
the only one that is like, the only series that I did not enjoy and in fact quit was Picard. I just couldn't make it through that one. But like Next Generation is great. Deep Space Nine is a masterpiece. Voyager starts off rough, but like finds its footing. I was joking on Blue Sky the other day that as soon as that started being written by the Swedish chef, it got way better, because he was just like, Borg, 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 Borg. And that, like, it gets really good. 7 of 9 is one of my favorite characters.
Great character.
Yeah, and like, so just watching those has been like my real thing for a long time now. Now that I think about it, we started with DS9, and so we've been watching them every night for a year or more now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Chris, you wrote some Star Trek, correct?
Yeah, I've been on. So that was the IDW thing. I've been on the Star Trek team, the Shared Universe books, which is Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly and I, and then like a stable of really wonderful artists. Yeah, we've done 2 years of books, and we did a crossover event last summer, and we're doing a big crossover event this spring called Lore War. But it's a year after DS9 ends, so it's the year between the end of DS9 and Nemesis, and we've filled it to the brim with the craziest things that have the 12 months those characters have ever had. But it feels like Star Trek fantasy football. But it's been so much fun working with Heather on that stuff and architecting it. But
can we talk to Heather about? Can we get a Tyler Crook Star Trek cover? I don't know if Tyler, I'm speaking for you here. I don't mean to, but if that's not something you're interested in, we need to get Heather on the line, because I would buy one of those.
Yeah, tell Heather I'll do that in a heartbeat. I would love to.
Oh my God, I will write her tonight. I know she's a huge fan of yours, and she's great. Yeah,
I haven't talked to her in a long, long time.
She's so awesome.
Man, those covers that Malachi Ward has been doing.
Yeah.
Oh, every time he posts one of those, I'm just like,
how'd you do this?
I'm blown away. Yeah, I'm like, this is the greatest like Star Trek, but like not the bad Star Trek.
Yeah, he does all the crossover covers, and so he's done the Lore War covers, and the palette is just super cool, and it's been really fun. For me, I think I just finished the Percival Everett book, James, which I don't know if you've heard about, but it was
book of the year last year for Barnes and Noble,
yes,
right?
I mean, so it's quite popular. Percival Everett wrote Erasure, upon which the movie American Fiction was based. But James is the story of Huck Finn, but told through it's a reimagining of that, told through the story of Jim, the slave that Huck is with, and it's his internal story, and it is so it's really heavy and beautiful, and we're just talking about this great country of ours, which is it is unflinching in its look at the country in America, especially at that time, and it's very relevant now, and it goes in some pretty intense directions, and but ultimately it's just such a beautiful human book. It's funny and shocking and scary, because you realize what it's like for an adult man to be going through this experience with a white child on the run, knowing what could happen at any moment to him, and It's fantastic. Yeah, I read it. I read it all through jury duty, not on the trial, obviously, but there's a lot of extra time in the courthouse. So I read it. I blew through it. It's such a good book. Yeah,
Okay.
It's incredible. Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that endorsement, because I've obviously seen it be celebrated through, again, Barnes and Noble and such, and obviously people best of 2024 lists, often that was on there somewhere. So
yeah.
You've inspired me to go grab that this weekend. But again, as I said a moment ago, Tyler, Chris, an absolute pleasure having you both here on the Oblivion Bar podcast. I cannot implore people enough to go grab that first issue of Out of Alcatraz. Comes out on March 19th. FOC is February 24th. So this will come out way before that, everybody. So when you're listening to this, you will have the opportunity to go to your LCS and go ahead and pre-order this book. This is how you support comics. This is a book that you should be pre-ordering for sure. I told my local comic shop here in Indianapolis, Mages Comics, I want every cover. I want cover A down to Hayden Sherman's 1 in 50. I want all of them. So
There's
you guys,
beautiful
Gorgeous
covers.
stuff. Yeah,
you
gorgeous
guys
stuff.
have like 8 covers for this first issue. That's incredible.
Yeah, they're good. It's like we did a great, nice breadth of covers. But I don't feel like we didn't go overboard, but it's like, 8 ones you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, before I let you go, and Chris, I'll start with you here. Anything you want to tease for the listener here, and how? Now, again, you're not on social media. How can they follow you anywhere? Can they follow your career? Or do they just show up one day? They're like, "Hey, look, there's a book from Chris." Cool.
Yeah. Oh, I guess Cantwell has a new thing. Yeah. No, I guess the major thing I'll tease is, well, we have that Lore War crossover coming up with Star Trek, and then I got a new television show coming out later this year. I don't know when they don't have a premiere date yet, but it's the 3rd season of The Terror for AMC. But it's based on an original novel by Victor LaValle, and I ran the show with Victor. And it's 6 episodes. It's called The Devil in Silver. It's based on Victor's book, which itself is quite wonderful. But we departed from the book and evolved it together with some really wonderful writers and actors. Dan Stevens is the lead. We shot that all last year in New York, and it's actually final delivery is on the 13th of this month. So I'm finally done with that show, and then it gets to premiere